Hello everybody, it is Ebontis, and this is going to be about as spoiler-free as I can get. No story, I'm not going to show you any late-game characters, I'm not really going to do anything late-game. This is a fresh playthrough, early build, stuff like that. And my goal is to kind of remind you of stuff that you've experienced, whether it be like tips or guides or anything like that, but to kind of give you a better flow and understanding of what you're working with, because you've got weapons and builds and pictos and stats and so many different ways to play this game. Also, you've got your dodges and your parries and how your skill in those can determine what your build's going to be. There's a lot to this game, but man, do I love this game. So I'm hoping with this guide, if you see this, one, hopefully the combat, which again, timestamps will be all the way through, so if you want to jump through and see certain sections, that's fine. But again, no, you should be spoiler safe on anything story related, no cutscenes, pretty much anything like that. And my goal here is just to hopefully smooth out your initial journey, give you guidance of kind of what to expect and look out for, and just things that I learned, because I already rolled credits once, but believe me, this is one of those rare games where I want to go play again, I just don't have the time. But hopefully this helps you, so let's get started. When it comes to settings, there's a couple I wanted to point out. When you go to gameplay, you can choose your difficulty. Expeditioner is kind of like normal, and believe me, there are some plenty challenging fights at this, so if you're looking for a reasonable experience, this is your way to go, but still have a challenge. You can go story if you just want to enjoy the story and not worry about, you know, your dodges and your parries and stuff a little bit. And if you want to go hardcore, it's sitting there waiting for you too. Tutorials I have disabled because I've literally gone through and beat the game once, but I actually recommend turning enabled on. It also lets you see each character's playstyle because they're all vastly different, and they give you a little character tutorial each time, so I actually do recommend seeing this. Character customization in cutscenes, if you put on like a mime outfit with a baguette, that's going to be in the cutscene, but if you want it disabled for a little more immersive look, you can do that. When it comes to sound, I always like to make sure voice dialogue is up, so I just turn everything down a smidge. Accessibility, camera shake, camera movement, that's up to you. Automatic QTE is probably the most important one. When it comes to attacks, if you just always want to make sure those hit strong and you know, don't want to leave any damage on the table if you miss a QT or anything like that, you can turn this on. Now, you're still going to have to dodge or parry or jump. That kind of thing is still going to have to be there. So that's why some people may still want the story difficulty versus expedition, or if you're crazy, go expert. But I will tell you, if you turn this on, you're just going to have your attacks hit as hard as they potentially can. If you have this disabled, you have to do the actual, like, hit the button at the right time to get the most potential out of it. Because if you fail your attacks, like, you don't get them and you completely whiff, like, I've had some that are, like, middle, but if you completely whiff an attack, you can do maybe half damage or less. So it's up to you on if you want to play the full side of the game, but this is one you definitely might consider. Everything else, I mean, you got colorblind mode and a little central dot, but this is probably the biggest one to consider. The other thing when it comes to settings is right here below it. It's Expedition Basics. If you want to understand like parries and dodge, you can even understand characters' playstyles, because Gustav's got an overcharge that he kind of builds up for a big attack. Luna's got the stains for all of the different types of elements that she works with. Mael has her stances that she'll rotate and dance between. There's other characters you'll get to later. I'm not going to spoil those. But one of the biggest ones, in case you just need to check, is your status effects. Burn, Freeze, Stun, Mark, Blight, Charm, Berserk, Cursed, Exhausted, Bound, Dizzy, Silence, and Rage. They're all different things that some can happen to you, some can happen to the enemies, and it's good to know what's going on when that happens. So if you, like, forget, you can always come in here and check. Same with buffs and debuffs. You might just be curious, like, is powerful worth me having that skill on my bar? Is 25% going to be worth the damage versus maybe something else I choose, or rush, or shell? And you can also see, like, if you apply powerless or defenseless to, say, an enemy, what does that do? Well, it increases the damage an enemy would take by 25%. That can be a big deal. So knowing what these percentages are can help you in your build. So if you ever wonder where that stuff's at, it's in here too. Final one is break. I probably will talk about this somewhere in here, but depending on where I show it. This is just like the stun bar that builds up. You need a very specific attack, like Gustav's overcharge can break. And when that break happens, what it's going to do is actually, for one, stun the enemy for a full turn, lets them take 20% more damage, but also for things like bosses, what it's going to allow you to do is potentially, there's a few moments, it's not often, but they'll like kind of swallow an enemy and kind of like hold them. And if you actually stun or break an enemy, it will actually like cause that boss to spit them back out. There's also some that you'll fight where if you stun them and get a break on them, you'll actually start doing normal damage, and it feels like up to that point you're doing like chip damage. And sometimes that's what you need to do. So understanding the break system is definitely something you're going to want to know how to build it up, because you'll notice if you do skills with multiple hits, you'll actually do less damage to the break bar as opposed to one big hit. But as I covered in stats, there's a point where probably middle of the game, you might start hitting that 999 damage cap. So if you can do multiple hits, maybe for like 4,000 or 5,000 versus one for 9, you kind of got to do the balance of maybe this won't do as much of the health bar, but maybe I'm focusing on the break bar with one big hit. There's a little bit of a dance all about what decision you're going to make, what attack you're going to do, and the break bar for your bigger enemies, especially bosses, can be a kind of a game changer in the right moment. So it's one to understand how to build it up is kind of crucial. Exploration. You typically don't have to explore a ton. It's usually a fork in the road, maybe an alternate route you might check, but some are easily missed. Because as I'm approaching this section, literally just coming up this hill, man, this game is beautiful sometimes, sorry. You have enemies just kind of jump out and fight you here. This is very early in the game. And then logically you would go over to the big dangly shining rope and then go up. But if you turn, you're going to notice you've actually got a section over here that you can smooth just miss if you don't look for it. So if you see a gap in terrain, honestly, just truly check, because there could be something substantial over here. And what you'll notice is this guy is a little stronger than normal when you go to fight him. He's actually pretty chunky. And behind him, I think it's either a Picto or Chroma or both, but he's got something back there. And sometimes it's a mini boss fight, which is going to drop maybe a cool weapon or a very special Picto or an upgrade for your health or healing or something along those lines. So it's up to you how much you want to explore, of course, but I do recommend, take both sides of the fork in the road. And if you feel like you're going along and making progress or getting to another, if you take the fork in the road and you get to like a flag from another expedition, that's likely the normal progression path. You might go check the other direction. That's just kind of how I do it, but there's a lot of things to find in the forks in the road in this game. So I do recommend it if you're enjoying the game, go find all the side nooks and crannies that are hidden around the world, because there's some really cool stuff in here. Mentioned exploration is a thing. Like, hey, the story says, hey, in the big crash ship is where the story is going to go. You can go in there, but you also might, explore down the tunnel and see what's in the big giant pot or whatever. There's also a little bit of platforming. Some of the platforming is going to involve your grapple hook, but sometimes it can just honestly involve finding something that you can jump on, and typically they're kind of obvious. They stick out as things. And you might have a few grapple points to get around. And then you can fly over here, and just there are points where like there is a little bit of verticality, which you wouldn't expect a game like this to have much of it, but it actually does. And when you find, hey, another Picto, 50% increased damage to free aim, which is really good against airborne enemies, that could be a huge thing later on, even if it's only a level 3 thing. And also, one more thing I'll tell you, there is no fall damage, so have fun skydiving and you'll enjoy that as well. But check out the vertical platforming moments, because sometimes if you see like, these look like they're going to lead me up somewhere, they probably are going to, so I'd get to jumping and go see what you find. So whenever you visit a campfire, whether it's out in the world or when you're at your kind of camp for between major levels and stuff like that, rest always. That's going to do one, it's going to heal your party. The other thing it's going to do, this will reset enemies. So if you have enemies right next to a flag out in like a level or something, and you like, I can farm this enemy for a little while, do it. It's, for one, a really good way to practice your dodges, your parries, that type of stuff. And, you can level up a little bit by practicing your dodging and parrying skills, and it kind of helps you across the board. The other thing is, do not forget to learn your skills, because you can accumulate some skill points as you go around, and you might actually have a chance to unlock some stuff. I don't have enough for my next one with Gustav, but over here at Lune, it looks like I actually can get a break skill, which is really nice. I cover break later. Basically, it's a stun meter that builds up under the health of most enemies if they've got enough health to actually build it up, and especially for like some bosses that will like swallow your teammate for a little while, break and getting that full stun is the only way to kind of get them to spit them back out. It only happens a few times, but it's a thing, and having break is really good because it also is a stun mechanic to really take them out of their turn and stuff. So paying attention to what skills are available, how you set up your build, there's a lot of options and ways to play. So I would toy around and tinker with stuff. And again, you're going to get enough recoats. If you don't love what skills you went after once, I would reset them probably one other time once you get a feel for enough and which characters you want to spend those on. But early on, I would hold on to the recoats. You'll get more later. I ended up probably with like 10 or more, but I didn't ever use one, and I ran with what I had and I made it work. But if you do want to mix up, you can. When it comes to attributes, you can play this game in multiple different ways, because the game is not just turn-based. It's not my health and attack power versus your health and attack power, and I've got to do more damage than you and pull heals out of my butt somewhere to be able to survive. I can damage you, and then when you come to attack me, I can dodge, I can parry, I can do a jump dodge, and maybe do a counter attack. And all of those things mean if I do them right, and I learn my timing for my dodges, learn my timing for my parries, and if I can really nail those down, I don't need a whole lot of vitality and defense because maybe I don't take any damage. Now, everybody's going to take damage as you're learning the game. I'm sure some people will do a no-hit run. They probably would focus truly on like might, agility, and luck for criticals. And if they were doing a no-hit run, they probably would not touch vitality and defense. Do I recommend that for everybody? Hell no. But you can have some fun where maybe you're like, I'm getting more comfortable with dodges and parries. Maybe my stats, I lean a little bit more into might, lean a little bit more into agility, maybe a couple more criticals now that I'm getting more comfortable. Early on, you might do a bit more of an even spread, so you're staying alive a little bit longer. But it also matters what weapon you have. Lumina, for example, actually does get a benefit to attack power when I spend points in vitality and defense because of the current weapon that she's using. But you'll notice every character, those stats are different. So Mael gets actually a little benefit from luck. Gustav gets some from defense, and you've got so many different weapons to choose from as you go throughout the game. This stuff could move around too. So again, the recoats, don't spend them early. Just, you know, be reasonable with your stats. Later on, when you figure out how you really want to lean into a specific build, you might want to recoat if you find a weapon you really love and a build that works and you want to go into fire building and however you want to do all that. That's totally fine. Just know at some point, if you have all fire and you went all into one thing, there may be some enemies where if you hit them with fire, you're going to actually heal them. So you need at least some options. But again, maybe she's your healer, your buffer, and then these two attack. So you've always got different ways to play. I just kind of wanted to cover. It's like health, attack power, speed, defense, and critical. But depending on how good you are in your defense, you might be able to play more into the might and agility and luck, and a little less into vitality and defense. If your, parry and dodge skills take a little longer to ramp up throughout the game, spread it a bit more even so you've got some survivability. Just a few words of advice from playing all the way through. You can play it how you want, but yeah, it's like depending on your skills and what fun you want to have. You can also change the difficulty. Nobody cares. Have fun and enjoy the story. That's part of why we're here. But you can go full glass cannon if you're good enough, and that's going to be an interesting one to watch, I think. All right, there's going to be stuff I'm going to be avoiding. That's why I'm recording these tips videos as early on as I possibly can. But I do want to cover the Pictos, the builds, the weapons, that kind of stuff, because the concepts still carry all the way through. But if I can cover it early, hopefully I can spoil less stuff because there's a lot of cool things in there. So the first and probably biggest thing is going to be your Pictos. Your Pictos are the things that you're going to pick up, you're going to earn from mini bosses or bosses. These are the things that you actually equip first. So you'll notice right here on Gustav that I've got these two equipped, and if I go over to Lumina, I've got these two equipped. Now you also notice there's like I don't know what you want to call it, a dark gold border around both the green icons, same thing with the red icons. If that border is filled, it means I have had that Picto equipped on a character, and I've been through 4 battles. So to learn a Picto, you have to go through 4 battles. Once you learn a Picto, so take Dodger, for example. Dodger is equipped on Gustav, but since I've gone through the 4 battles, now I can go over to Lune, and if I go over to the Lumina, you'll have a number of Lumina points that you can spend. And you'll notice I have 5 Lumina points. So I can actually equip Dodger on her, and I get the benefit of 1 AP. 1 AP per perfect dodge once per turn. I actually get that effect. Same thing with burning shots, 20% chance to burn on a free aim shot. Those are the Pictos that I have equipped. The difference is when you have a Picto equipped like these right here, you get stats from them as well. And you're going to find different Pictos. You're going to find a ton as you go through the game. They're typically going to be higher level and higher level and higher level. Sometimes you'll find like a duplicate of one you've already got, but it's at an even higher level. And the stats will matter. So while Lune actually has Dodger equipped over here in the Lumina, I don't get the stats for it. But I do get the actual ability benefit, which is still very helpful as you build out your character's like setup. Same thing over here with Gustav. So I right now have the Pictos of Dodger and Burning Shots. I have those Pictos equipped, so I haven't spent any Lumina points. But I can spend 5 Lumina points to also get plus 25% critical chance if I'm fighting a burning enemy. So if I spend my 5 remaining Lumina points here, I get that effect because it has been learned by any of my characters. So say if Gustav has these equipped and I have 3 people in my party, once I've got it learned, any of them equip it, and multiple people can equip it, which is crucial because when you are trying to learn a Picto, you can't actually equip it until it's fully learned by anybody else. So as you're earning and finding Pictos, it is advantageous for you to get as many equipped by as many different characters as possible to learn as many as you can. And then once they're learned, then you can decide, do I want the stats from that Picto, or do I just want to spend the Lumina currency that I've got to get the ability from it specifically? Like Dodger only costs 1 Lumina, so that's an early one. I would say learn that and then just equip that to everybody, because you'll be dodging throughout the entire game, and every perfect dodge per turn that you get, if you get 1 perfect dodge, it's an extra action point for your future turns. As for like criticals and burning shots, if you're doing, you know, a setup between your 3 characters that doesn't have a lot of burning going on, that's not going to be that beneficial. Early on, you've only got so many options. Later on, you're going to have 30 or 40 of these things to pick from. You're going to have to lean a little bit more into your builds. So that's the difference. You've got Pictos that give you stats. So like she's got the speed on and defense on these, and then I've got the speed on both. But the Lumina, that's basically the ability that you've learned. And then those are just the ability, but with no stats. But every single character, once the Pictos are learned, can use these with your kind of currency spend that you've got. So that's one piece of the build. Your skills, we've covered the skill tree. Once you figure out your build, you're going to have way more than six skills. So just pick whichever ones work best with your build. Pretty early on in your game, you're going to meet this guy. This is the Curator. 2 main purposes that he's got is upgrading weapons. And you'll notice when you see these weapons to go from level 3 to 4 or level 2 to 3, the damage jumps are substantial. So truly trying to keep your weapons as high as possible makes a difference. Now, sometimes like there's a Ceruleum, like right now it's level 3, maybe later on I find a duplicate copy and I bump this thing up to like level 10. You might do that sometimes, but I know it didn't happen for everything. So if you fall in love with like, hey, I really love like fire skills, this is a good build for Lune, this might be the one you want to level up. And notice I've got plenty of currency to level it up, so if I upgrade the weapon, it's not even that expensive. It's like, but it goes from 62 to 83, fire element. I bring it up a level, and then you'll notice also when you level it up, now my stats are going to be in a better position. So this one potentially that I thought was like better because it was C and B for vitality and defense, this now is C and B for defense and agility, so it takes it to that next tier as well, which is going to keep it equivalent. So truly the level of your weapons is crucial to always push them about as high as you can. Like you'll notice the Chroma Catalyst, I have like 31 of these things. To get from level 1 to 3 and just playing through the first couple hours of the game, I had plenty. And then the next tier takes you a little while to accumulate that currency, but then you're going to have plenty of it to push these all the way up to level 10. Level 10, you'll notice, is like another big threshold for a skill upgrade, and then that's going to be 10 to 19, and then 20 is a different currency. So you've got these thresholds, but once you're kind of in that realm, you might be accumulating currency for a while, and you might come back to your base and be able to upgrade your weapon like 3 or 4 times. That's going to be a massive difference, so pay attention to when you can upgrade. And if you are really enjoying a build with a weapon, enjoy it for a while. You might find something different you like, and that's kind of how the game's going to go. But I will tell you, when you get a new weapon, it's also going to be high enough level that if you do get it, you don't have to spend all the currency to upgrade. But if you like something you're using and you've got the currency to bring it with you, keep that build working. Why not? So have fun with the weapon upgrades. They really do make a difference. The other thing you want to pay attention to is just your expedition resources. So down here, this is going to be where if you find a shape of blank, health, energy, or life, you can actually take the small energy tent or small revive tent or small healing tent and turn it into a regular one. So now when I use a healing potion, it's actually twice as strong because I think it goes from about 1/3 to 2/3 of your health. I never found one that made it 100%. Maybe that's a new game plus thing. Could be. But don't forget to upgrade those because occasionally you'll see them and you're like, I need to upgrade that. So every time you come back into the camp area with the Curator, make sure you check on these because you might have picked stuff up you forgot about, and make sure you spend those. The other thing is your Lumina. Your Lumina, as you know, is how you make your build and spend your Lumina currency on the Pictos that everybody has learned. Well, I have 19 of that color of Lumina just from beating enemies and bosses and all the other places that I've accumulated it. So guess what? If I want to give Mael a couple more Lumina, there you go. Couple more there, couple more there. You can spend it pretty quickly because I can tell you, I got these numbers up to like 70s, 80s, 90s between my characters. You're going to get a lot to spend, so I do recommend Color of Lumina. Don't just sit on it. Like, you might wait until you get through a little bit of like the early part of the game, maybe even get through Act 1, see which characters you're vibing with before you really dump it into a character that you may not spend as much time with. But like early on especially, spread it a little bit, have a little, and then once you kind of know which characters you want to spend more time with, then you can just take that Lumina and just start dumping into your main group of characters, really level them up. You should never be in camp once you kind of know your group of characters and have any Lumina that you haven't spent on somebody. Always make sure you're putting this in somebody's use, because if it's sitting there just as color Lumina, you're wasting it. And you can just get more out of your build, because the more points Lumina, the more Pictos you can equip. Now, you don't obviously get the Picto stats, but again, the more Lumina you equip, the more whole different setup your build can be. So don't sleep on this one, because I've come back here and I've had 20 or 30 of these things. Major difference to your character when you equip maybe a couple more really cool things. So don't sleep on those, and definitely make sure, you might forget that you picked these up exploring somewhere. Check this every so often. You might actually be able to upgrade your potions too. So every so often you're going to come across a merchant, and it's these little gestural guys, and then they have like 6,000 boxes all over your back. Like they're full of stuff, and he's this tiny little thing sitting down here. But you have an option, and it's kind of up to you. There's no real detriment to doing it, but you can fight the merchant, because Gestrals love to fight. So there's no reason really not to. And if you can complete the fight, it'll usually unlock kind of a unique Picto or a weapon or something like that. So I advise doing it. Also, depending on how much money you've got, the color of Lumina is a currency that you'll be able to give whichever character you want more Lumina currency to spend on Lumina. Always worth it. Chroma Catalyst, like I've got 14 right now, and you can only take character weapons up to like level 3 with this first one. Maybe save your money there if you've found enough of those. But the Lumina, you can always use more color of Lumina. So I would always buy these, and then I'll fight the merchant. And the merchant fight's really not too bad. You can pick who you want to send in there. I tend to send just whoever I feel the most comfortable with, or who has kind of the strongest build. And we'll just go through and attack, and then we'll be done. I'll show you what I get. So after you beat them in their fight, what you'll notice is then you're going to have something available. And as I said, it's typically a Picto. This one, very early on in the game, 20 speed, 4 critical, and then my base attack, being able to apply defenseless, is actually pretty powerful, because it means anytime I run out of AP, that I'm going to be able to actually get a defenseless debuff on an enemy, so I can do even more damage with my other characters. So I put it on my L for now because she had space, and then once it's learned, potentially I could apply it to all my other characters. So the vendors are cool. That's why I would say, like, when you explore and you find a lot of chroma, which is kind of like your gold in this game, this is what you'll spend it on. And if you have a vendor that you can fight, I always recommend doing it, because the Pictos are generally pretty cool. Another small piece of advice is actual headshots kind of matter. Not always, but when you're dealing with the airborne enemies, especially like these, a headshot can make a difference as opposed to just a body shot. So, like, the critical on this guy is going to be the mine. So if I shoot the mine, this is going to be, like, damage to everybody, and you can tell it kind of works. But if I shoot a body shot versus a headshot, it is noticeable. So a body shot there, well, he's marked, so this is a bad example. But a headshot will do noticeably more. Now, this guy's got a critical spot here, and then he doesn't really have a head. But this guy doesn't have a critical spot, but if I can get a headshot here, sometimes, and again, not always, sometimes just might be a critical, but there are some enemies where headshots can make a difference. So if you're trying to find where to spend that AP, if you're fighting a lot of airborne enemies, headshots kind of make a difference. So, you know, don't just aim at the toe, try and aim at something important, and it might make a difference. But the weak spots, the obvious ones like these, of course, those are going to give you a big damage chunk. But even just like a headshot on a floating enemy, if you don't have much else to shoot, can make a difference in killing them in a few shots and running out of AP. Alright, so I'm going to use this battle as kind of an understanding of a sequence of events, just so you kind of have an idea what to go through. This is a very basic fight, but I just kind of want to explain the thoughts, how the characters work. I'm not going to show you late game characters, I'm not going to show you a lot of stuff, but this is going to be just an idea of how to think about things when it comes to combat, because dodges and parries can save your butt. Dodges are a little bit harder, and again, this is going to be a longer section, so if you want to skip this, that's why I put it at the end, but it's pure combat example of about everything I can throw into one fight, because we have a good mix here. So the first thing is you're going to notice I've got enemies with weak points on them. So the weak points are going to do a substantial chunk of damage. Now, nobody has a shield on them at the moment. If they have a shield, what I would do is, if you see a shield on an enemy and they have a critical spot, the thing to make note of is when you hit an enemy, if you hit them in a critical spot, it is going to try and do that critical damage. But if there's a shield over top of them, like their health bar is gray and has, say, 2 shields on it, I would need to do 2 basic pops to wherever, like, pretty basic hits. That would take the shields away. Then the next hit is where I would want to hit the weak point, that critical type spot. So keep that in mind. When it comes to airborne enemies, they can only be hit by your ranged attacks. So if I go and I do either a basic attack with my sword, or if I do a skill and choose any of these, an airborne enemy is going to dodge all of that stuff. I probably somewhere in like my 30-hour playthrough or 32-hour playthrough, I probably hit them maybe once or twice, and I swear it was on accident, so never assume on that one. Now the thing to know is every time I pull the trigger to fire, just like this, it's also going to cost me an action point. Well, my action points are also for my skills. So it's trying to figure out this dance of where do I want to spend my free aim shots, where do I want to spend my skill points, base attacks are going to be a certain thing, and trying to understand that little bit of dance. And then also knowing that depending on what Pictos you've got equipped and how much AP you can charge back up, which later on in the game you can build yourself quite a bit, and then also how much are you going to dodge. Dodging, one of the first Pictos you get is Dodger. If you do one perfect dodge, I'm going to get an AP back. But maybe if I parry the whole thing, I'm getting AP for all of my parries, and I can get a counterattack in so I know I can do more. All of that is kind of factored in. That's why the combat is so engaging. It's not just like choose what I'm going to do for an attack and wait. No, you're engaged the whole time. So grounded enemy and grounded enemy are going to wait. What I'm going to do first is airborne enemy, so I'm going to hit the critical point up top. Now it's a weakness. Weakness basically will mean that the current damage I'm doing is ice damage, and that means these metal enemies are weak to ice. And a lot of this does kind of work as physics would. These kind of metal enemies, they're going to get brittle from ice. If they're water enemies, electricity can be damaging, and then fire has its weaknesses. But on the other side, things can be resistant. So if you see resistant pop up, that actually means they're going to take 50% less damage. And there's some that will actually absorb. Like, I've hit enemies that were made of light with light damage, and I've healed them. So you really got to pay attention to some of those things later on, and if you see like the fact that you healed them, you got to know what you just did to them, so kind of pay attention to your attacks. So this is the first goal, is to take out this enemy with just my action points, because somebody's going to have to hit him with their ranged attack, and if it's not this guy, then it's going to be one of the other two. But I'm going to start with him. So that weakness worked. That managed to take him out because it was a weakness hit. Now, I've got 2 more AP. So from here, I've got the option to either pull out a basic skill, I could do a base attack and maybe build up some AP for the next round, or I could go through and go back to my aim. Now, there's 2 more critical spots that I can hit, so if I want to do that, maybe I want to hit a critical spot here. Again, that's a weakness, and since I've got the Picto on, which is burning shots, I get a chance every so often to apply burn. This is where the Pictos and the Lumina, when you build out these characters, they get to do some really, really cool stuff. Now I've got 1 AP left, which I can't do anything with 1 AP, so I'm just going to do a base attack. I'm probably a little high level for this guy, so I don't know if I'm going to kill him. If I do, sorry. Yep. It's also because I'm hitting him for weaknesses. Now, what I should do is probably just like skip my turn or flee or something like that. But if I go for his critical point here, you can see now that's resistant. If it was a ice attack, then that would have actually probably killed him, but since it was a weakness, he actually resisted it. I did less damage. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip my turn. And for her, I'm going to skip the turn as well, because the attack can come in a couple of ways. When the attack comes in, you have to decide if you're going to parry or dodge, and you've also got jump. There's 2 other types of attacks later. I'll let you guys find those when you get there, but same concepts apply. That's why I said leave tutorials on, because throughout the game, there's a lot of stuff you learn. And I would say for your first playthrough, leave tutorials on so you learn everything as it pops up. Otherwise, it's just going to assume you know. So my advice is that tutorials thing in the settings, leave that on. But what's going to happen is he's either going to do an attack. Now, if I know the attack and I can parry it, I'll go for that. If I feel like dodge is going to be safer, I can go for the dodge. The difference is if I dodge perfectly with Dodger, and 1 dodge, I'll get AP. If it goes for a parry, I can actually, if I parry the attack, I can counterattack and I can do damage. And then if they show the little icon for jump and you jump in the air with like A, while you're in the air, you can hit right trigger to do a counterattack, sometimes with the whole team. So I'm going to skip this one as well. Danger. So you guys can see what comes in. So they're going to go for a big swing. And that was a perfect dodge. So I got AP because I perfectly timed that dodge. But if I skip the turn a couple of times, just to guys let you see him, because he's going to go down really quick. Now if he comes in for another attack, take cover. He's going to go for another swing. Now I went for a parry, and he's definitely going to die from that. And that's because, I mean, I spent 30 hours in the game already, so I kind of got a feel for the parries and things like that. You also see no damage plus 20% experience. That's not going to happen all the time, but when you start to get more comfortable with these attacks and parries and dodges and builds and understanding the sequence of events, it makes things a lot better. And that's kind of why I said it probably earlier in the video, is basically to say, practice your dodges, practice your parries. Each like world you go to, each level, you're going to have a whole bunch of different enemies, different animations to learn for the dodges and parries and timing. Some are really slow. Some are almost designed to juke you out. Some of the chroma like mini boss enemies are absolutely brutal and they're almost going to have some trick attacks. There's a lot to learn in this game, but as you practice, the more time you spend fighting these enemies, the better you're going to get. And that's where all of that payoff's going to come into play. So I know that's kind of a basic sequence of events, but that's kind of like dealing with burn and dealing with the types of attacks, resistance, and then we didn't even get to break, which is for bosses, but I talked about that, and that's when you get to start build up that break meter, and then you would do the break attack, and that's going to be the stun, a few of the bosses that had swallowed your teammates, that'll cause them to spit it up, and all those things will happen. But if you want to see more specifics, if you want to see something else, if you want to see certain boss fights in this game, I maybe could dig through the footage, but I'm not sure what I could get to as easily. But if you have more questions, that is what the comments are for. Please ask the questions down below. Happy to answer as best as I can. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like below, share it to friends with other people who are playing. If you're enjoying the game, share the game with other people, because whether you watch my video or not, I hope this game succeeds because I really thoroughly enjoyed it. Outside of that, I hope you got something out of this, and if you did, drop a like, leave a comment below, find me on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Blue Sky, Patreon, wherever you want to find me. Say hello, drop a like, subscribe, whatever. Have a good one, and I hope this helps, and hopefully you learned something. Have a good one, and we continue.